Chapter 76. Chu Xiu's guess was right. Nie Donglu did not make a move in the end. He just looked at Chu Xiu and said lightly, "Brother Chu, although you and I can't be friends because of a misunderstanding, I don't want you to fall into the devil's path. In the northern Yanjianghu, our morgue village has always adhered to one principle, that is to punish evil. Brother Chu, I hope you will not forget this." The meaning of Nie Donglio's words was very clear. Although he would not make a move on Chu Xiu now, it was obvious that if Chu Xiu had an excuse to fall into his hands, he would not mind using the power of the morgue village to punish evil. As for now, it was more important to wait for the treasure in Lying Mountain to come out. After the battle, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian stood around the crack as they wished. It was the best position, at least second to Nie Donglu and the other warriors of the big sections. On the second day, although the crack had widened a little, the people did not see the treasure come out. Instead, they saw a group of unexpected people. More than a dozen martial artists separated the crowd and walked towards the top of the mountain. The one leading them was a handsome young man who always had a proud look on his face. He was wearing a brocade robe and a silver-white fox fur coat, looking incomparably luxurious. Moreover, the clothes of his subordinates were also very thick. They were tall and had rough looks. At first glance, it was obvious that they were not from the eastern Yin region. Seeing this group of people, there was a sudden discussion among the crowd. Chu Xiu also knew who they were. This group of people turned out to be from the northern floating snow city. The northern floating snow city was also a big northern Yin sect, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. However, the northern floating snow city was located in the northernmost part of the Liaodong region. It was covered with snow all year round, and only felt some warmth in the summer. Therefore, it was very sparsely populated. Even the Yin kingdom did not have many troops stationed there. The drift snow city of the extreme north was built in such a desolate place, but the body tempered by the extreme cold was also extremely powerful. So in terms of influence, although the drift snow city of the extreme north couldn't be compared to the Morale Manor, but in terms of strength, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the drift snow city of the extreme north could even suppress the Morale Manor. The leader was the eldest son of the northern floating snow city, Blood Spear Bai Wuji, ranked 18th on the Longhu list. Although Bai Wuji was dressed like a playboy, he had been cultivating in the extremely harsh environment of the northern floating snow city since he was a child. At the age of 13, he carried a steel spear that was even taller than him and a bottle of Jinchuang medicine. Of course, the reason why Bai Wuji was unhappy with Nie Donglu was because of his ranking on the Longhu list. His ranking on the Longhu list was achieved with the silver spear in his hand. What did Nie Donglu rely on? Just scheming. For example, in the battle that made him famous, he annihilated thousands of Black Cloud 18 villages with only 100 people. But in fact, the ones who died were the others. He, Nie Donglu, spent most of his time hiding in the dark, only making a move at the last moment. This was the kind of person Bai Wuji despised the most. The warriors who were originally under Nie Donglu's command looked at Bai Wuji, then at Nie Donglu, but none of them dared to say a word. The northern floating snow city was a big northern Yin sect. Although it was not in the eastern Yin land, they did not dare to provoke it. Now that the smell of gunpowder between these two was a little strong, they did not want to get involved. But at this time, Bai Wuji felt that someone was looking at him from Nie Donglio's side. He directly glared at the person, and his originally lazy eyes suddenly flashed with a frightening cold light. "Brat, what are you looking at?" The man who was glared at by Bai Wuji was about to cry. He didn't want to get involved in the matter between Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji. He didn't even say a word. How did he get involved in this? Nie Donglu stood in front of Bai Wuji and said lightly, "Brother Bai, don't scare him. Your Bai clan's secret ice soul godly eyes is said to be able to freeze even the primordial spirit. He has just reached the Xiantian realm. How can he withstand it?" Bai Wuji sneered and said, "Starting to protect your subordinates? Don't worry, my ice soul godly eyes is not even at the minor completion level. It can't hurt anyone." Nie Donglu frowned and said, "I, Nie Donglu, do not have subordinates with me. These people are my brothers and friends." Bai Wuji waved his hand and said, "All right, don't talk to me with such hypocritical words. Get out of my way." This time, I am also planning to get involved in the treasure hunt. In recent years, this young master's luck has not been very good. I did not expect to encounter the birth of a treasure while I was out doing business. Is this the sign of my luck changing? Of course, Nye Donglu, you are out of luck. Originally, you were the strongest here, but now that I am here, you may not be able to compete with me. Ha ha ha. Nye Donglu's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light as he said, I have never felt that I am the strongest here. There are still 2 young talents who are rogue cultivators. Their strength is also quite extraordinary. They can kill warriors of the same level as them easily. Even I had to take a step back just now. When the real battle begins, those 2 will also be strong opponents. Now brother Bai, one more won't make a difference, and brother Bai won't make a difference. Bai Wuji followed Nye Donglu's gaze and saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian standing to the side. His eyes also revealed a trace of surprise. Bai Wuji did not understand what was going on. He sneered twice and whispered a few words to a servant beside him. Then he sneered at Nye Donglu and said, It's good to have more people. The more people, the livelier. Otherwise, it would be boring if we could snatch the treasure without even fighting. After saying this, Bai Wuji stood to the side. He no longer had any intention of feigning civility with Nye Donglu. After a while, a servant walked out of the crowd and told Bai Wuji everything that had happened in LV Yongshan recently. This immediately made Bai Wuji sneer. Although he did things in a simple manner, it did not mean that he was simple-minded. Now that he had someone ask around, it was indeed as he had expected. Nye Donglu had suffered at the hands of those 2. Then, those words he had said just now should be to provoke Bai Wuji to find trouble with those 2. However, Nye Donglu had also spoken half the truth. Those 2 were really strong. They could kill warriors of the same level, as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. Normally, Bai Wuji, who was fond of fighting, might be interested in the other party. But now he was more curious about the treasure in Liuyang Mountain. Chapter 77. With the arrival of Bai Wuji, the entire Liuyang Mountain became even livelier. Chu Xiu did not mind. The more people, the better. The more people there were, the better. The more people there were, the more he could win in the chaos. Otherwise, if this place was always dominated by one sect, even if Chu Xiu knew about the treasure in advance, he would not be able to snatch it. 3 days later, the crack on Liuyang Mountain became bigger and bigger. Finally, a beam of emerald light rose directly into the sky. As the mountain trembled, the crack split open completely, and a huge passage big enough for 3 people to walk through appeared. A stone staircase appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed suddenly, but then they all revealed looks of ecstasy. What did the stone staircase represent? It meant that there was an underground palace buried under Liuyang Mountain. It was a relic, and there were even more precious treasures. Not just one or a few, but a whole bunch. Especially for those rogue cultivators following behind. If there were only one or a few precious treasures in this place, the chances of them getting them were almost negligible. But now there was an entire relic below, which meant that they would not return empty-handed. Nye Donglu and the other big sects could eat the meat, and they could get the soup. Therefore, the moment the stone staircase appeared, everyone near the crack rushed down first. Chu Xiu did not rush at the front, but followed behind Nye Donglu and the others, not in a hurry. The power of the array had completely dissipated, but it did not mean that it was safe below. It was a good thing that someone was opening the way for them. Everyone walked down the stone staircase. This stone staircase actually led to the underground of Liuyang Mountain. No wonder those who went to excavate before did not find anything. Even after so many years, no one had discovered this relic. It was buried so deep, unless the entire Liuyang Mountain was razed to the ground, it was absolutely impossible to find this relic. When they reached the underground, a giant bronze door appeared in front of everyone. The light of the array was still faintly flickering on it, but at this time, it was very weak. Yulu Chuan and the rest looked at each other, then sent a few of their stronger Xiantian lords to try and open the bronze door. However, even with the combined strength of several Xiantian lords, they could only shake the door slightly. This caused the expressions of everyone present to change slightly. The relic was right in front of them, but they couldn't enter it. That would be fun. Bai Wuji sneered. A bunch of trash. Third bro, go help them. As his voice fell, one of Bai Wuji's subordinates stepped forward and rudely pushed the other cultivators to the side. Then he took off his wolf skin robe and circulated his Zhen Qi. With a loud shout, the qi, blood, and muscles of his body began to swell. His body seemed to have doubled in size, and his entire body was covered with dense blue veins, making him look like a monster. Chu Xiu turned to Lu Fengxian and said, "Brother Lu, can you beat this person in terms of strength?" LV Fengxian shook her head and said, "This person is also born with divine strength. Moreover, he cultivated a cultivation technique that specialized in tempering the fleshly body in the later stages, which strengthened him even more. Therefore, in terms of strength, I can't beat him. However, this person is a bit unconventional, only tempering his body and strength, ignoring other aspects. Such a person would be a fierce general on the battlefield, but if I want to kill him, it would be a piece of cake." Chu Xiu nodded his head. Although LV Fengxian's attacks were usually incomparably tyrannical, that was only because his opponents were weaker than him in terms of strength. Therefore, LV Fengxian had chosen the simplest method of suppressing his opponents with brute force. If they were to truly fight, LV Fengxian's ancient halberd would be able to bring out both good and bad. But at this time, under the full force of the Northern Driftsnow City's martial artist, the door which several other martial artists failed to open was actually pushed open by him alone. But at the same time as he pushed open the door, a black mist drifted out. This mist actually contained a strong corrosive nature. The Driftsnow City's martial artist couldn't dodge in time, and was directly enveloped by the mist. Everyone only heard him let out a few miserable howls before he hurriedly retreated. When everyone was sure that the mist had dissipated and couldn't harm them, they discovered that the northern floating snow city's cultivator was already dead. His flesh and blood had dried up, and the 10 feet tall giant had turned into a dried corpse. Nie Donglu said in a low voice, "It's corpse qi. Corpse qi that has accumulated for 10,000 years. Originally, this corpse qi wouldn't be so powerful, but after accumulating underground for 10,000 years, this corpse qi contains an extreme death qi. Almost anyone who touches it will die. But now that the door is open, and the outside air and life force is flowing in, there shouldn't be any problems. But everyone be careful. Since there is corpse qi inside, it proves that people have died, and a lot of them at that." The several cultivators who had pushed open the door felt a lingering fear in their hearts. If it weren't for this northern floating snow city's cultivator coming out to show off, they would have been the ones to die. Only Bai Wuji's expression was ugly. He hadn't even won the battle yet, and a cultivator had already died. This wasn't a good sign. Everyone walked through the door into the ruins. It was incomparably dark inside, with only some faint light coming from outside. But for these Xiantian realm and blood condensation realm cultivators, this wasn't a big deal. At their level, because their blood and qi were strong, their 5 senses were also much more developed. Although their vision at night was slightly worse than in the day, they could still see clearly. After stepping into the ruins, everyone suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. It wasn't because they found a treasure, but because there were too many corpses around. The ruins looked like an underground palace, and the decorations were very luxurious. But at this time, the stone pillars were wrapped in chains, and the corpses were chained. There were no obvious wounds, and there were signs of continuous struggle. These people were obviously tied up here and starved to death. Everyone's expression darkened. This should be the ruins left behind by a Devil Path sect. The ruins left behind by Devil Path sects were generally acknowledged to be inferior to those left behind by Righteous Path sections. This was because those Devil Path sects were too ruthless, and would arrange many cruel methods in the ruins. Moreover, most of the Devil Path cultivation methods were extremely extreme, and not very suitable for Righteous Path martial artists to cultivate. But it didn't matter. If they obtained these Devil Path treasures and sold them, they believed that many Devil Path sects would be interested in them, and the price would not be low. Chu Xiu followed behind Nie Donglu and the others, looking around. Others thought that this was the ruins of a Devil Path sect, but Chu Xiu knew that they guessed wrong, or rather, it should be said that they guessed wrong by half. This was actually the residence of an ancient devil path tyrant, Heaven Devil Lord. This ancient devil lord was extremely powerful, and was an existence that surpassed the 5th level of chi-controlling realm. However, he was a murderous and eccentric person. He clearly had the strength to establish a sect, but he had always been alone. The corpses in this palace were not his disciples, but his servants. They should have been buried with him when he died. Chu Xiu made a gesture to Lu Fengxian, telling him to attack together with him. This should be considered safe. This underground palace was the residence of Heaven Devil Lord, so he naturally wouldn't put too many traps in his residence. However, he had set up a formation here, and those with low strength would definitely alarm the formation and be strangled to death. But now that 10,000 years had passed, the formation had completely dissipated, so there was no need to worry. At the end of the underground palace was an extremely lavishly decorated hall. At the top was a bronze throne, and on it sat a skeleton wearing a black robe. It was unknown what the black robe was made of, but even after 10,000 years, it still hadn't decayed. However, the body of the skeleton had already decayed, leaving only pitch-black bones, like black crystals. Even after 10,000 years, it still wouldn't decay. In front of the skeleton, there were more than 10 secret boxes placed neatly. Among them, the secret box in the center seemed to be made of some kind of strange metal, emitting a strong golden light. It was unusually dazzling, obviously not an ordinary item. Before everyone could react, Chu Xiu directly made his move, heading straight for the pile of secret boxes. His target was the golden secret box in the center. As Chu Xiu made his move, Lu Fengxian also followed closely behind him. This caused Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji to snort coldly at the same time. With so many people here, how could they let these two rogue cultivators take the lead? Bai Wuji coldly snorted, and directly took out a space box from his robe. From within he took out a 10 feet long silver spear. This silver spear was too big, and not convenient to carry around, so most of the time, Bai Wuji kept it in the space box. Although the space box was precious, for someone of Bai Wuji's status, it was only an ordinary item. It was unknown what kind of metal Bai Wuji's spear was made of, but it actually emitted a deep scarlet light. With the spear in hand, he directly attacked Lu Fengxian. At this time, Nie Donglu also made his move. His body was like the wind, and although he moved later, he arrived first. Qi swirled between his hands, and a powerful palm force blasted towards Chu Xiu, accompanied by a faint sound of breaking air. Chapter 78. When he saw Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji attacking him and Lu Fengxian, Chu Xiu's eyes lit up. They had taken the bait. In a chaotic battle, he had to control the rhythm of the battle. He could not give them too much time to think. As Chu Xiu and the other three attacked, the rest of the warriors from the major sects and the non-affiliated warriors also joined in the fight. It was a complete mess. No one knew if there were any other treasures in the underground palace. In any case, there were more than 10 boxes in front of them. These boxes were placed in front of the skeleton. It was obvious that these boxes were the most important things to the skeleton when it was alive. There was no doubt that they were treasures. Moreover, the skeleton itself was like a black crystal. It was obvious that it was a powerhouse who stood at the peak of the Jianghu when it was alive. Just like the glazed Buddha bones left behind by the senior monks of the Buddhist sects, they were immortal for tens of thousands of years. They were all treasures. Moreover, if you took the glazed Buddha bones of the senior monks of the Buddhist sects, people from the Great Light Temple, or the Bodhi Zen Monastery might come after you. But if you took the skeleton of a demonic warrior, there would be no need to be so careful. Bai Wuji was already fighting with Lu Fengxian. In fact, the two of them walked the same martial path. Although one used a spear and the other used a halberd, they both had great strength. As they clashed, the clanging sounds of their weapons could be heard. Every time a warrior of the same level was hit, the opponent would be smashed to pieces. However, Lu Fengxian was born with great strength, while Bai Wuji had inherited the techniques of the fluttering snow city in the far north. In this aspect, he was much stronger than Lu Fengxian. So in the first exchange, there was no clear winner. On the other side, Chu Xiu felt Nie Donglu's palm coming down. He immediately turned around, and in the evening drizzle, a crimson slash appeared. The saber light was beautiful, but it carried a strong murderous intent. Nia Donglu didn't need to use any weapons. His hands were enough to control the universe. As his hands danced, there was a yin and a yang in his palms, as if the universe was changing. It directly affected the momentum of Chu Xiu's saber, causing his saber to deviate. The powerful palm force blasted on the body of Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber. The huge force directly forced Chu Xiu to step back. A grave expression appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. Back then, Wind-Sweeping Tower had given Nia Donglu this ranking. Part of the reason why Nia Donglu was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard was because of Chu Xiu's schemes, but it was also because of Nia Donglu's strength. Nia Donglu had probably reached the pinnacle of the innate realm. He was probably one step into the inner invulnerability realm. In terms of strength, Nia Donglu was even stronger than Su Chongyang, who was killed by Chu Xiu. His heaven and earth hands controlled the universe. As long as Chu Xiu's saber momentum was stuck by his opponent, no matter how fast Chu Xiu's saber was, he would not be able to escape from his opponent's grasp. Looking at Chu Xiu opposite him, Nia Donglu's eyes revealed a hint of murderous intent. Nia Donglu really wanted to recruit a young and powerful independent cultivator, like Chu Xiu, to be his subordinate. However, since they had already become enemies, it was better to get rid of Chu Xiu as soon as possible, so that he could have one less problem. Just now, Nia Donglu did not make a move outside because he was worried about his reputation and the treasures in the ruins. Now that Chu Xiu dared to snatch something from him, Nia Donglu naturally had an excuse and reason to deal with him. Most importantly, Nia Donglu already felt threatened by Chu Xiu. If it were Yu Luchuan and the others, they might be very disdainful of Chu Xiu. Even if Chu Xiu was stronger than them now, they still thought that Chu Xiu was only from the Jianghu and would not amount to much. As he progressed, he would become slower and slower because of the lack of cultivation resources, and they would definitely surpass him. But Nia Donglu did not think that way. His father had once told him to never underestimate any Jianghu ruffians. Any aristocratic family, a few generations back, was also from the Jianghu ruffians. He, Nia Renlong, could use 30 years to go from a ruffian to the current leader of the Morgue Manor, a famous overlord in the Jianghu. Why couldn't others? If there was one Nia Renlong in the Jianghu, there would be more Nia Renlongs. Nia Donglu remembered his father's words. Now that he had an excuse and opportunity, Nia Donglu immediately attacked Chu Xiu. Every move was filled with killing intent. Chu Xiu was forced to retreat by Nia Donglu. Just as he was nearing the secret boxes, Chu Xiu suddenly did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He sheathed his saber and used the great grappling hand, grabbing at Nia Donglu's arms. Seeing this, Nia Donglu laughed coldly and said, "The grappling hand you cultivated is indeed exquisite, but in terms of hand skills, how many people in the Jianghu would dare say they are stronger than my father's heaven and earth cloud hand?" Nia Donglu's arms shook, and his palms contained the power of heaven and earth. While resisting the pull of Chu Xiu's grappling hand, he punched at Chu Xiu's chest, exchanging injuries for lives. Even if Chu Xiu's great grappling hand could cripple Nia Donglu's arms, Nia Donglu's palm strike could directly shatter Chu Xiu's heart meridian. Chu Xiu frowned. He wanted to act more realistically, so he did not use his full strength. However, he was forced into a corner by Nia Donglu. In that instant, Chu Xiu retreated, and his saber turned around and slashed at Nia Donglu. Nia Donglu did not retreat at all. His palms turned into a clamp, and he caught the red sleeve saber between his palms. He wanted to snatch it away, but Chu Xiu suddenly exploded with a powerful killing intent. A powerful force that could pierce through the sun and moon burst out, making Nia Donglu feel the power of the red sleeve saber explode. Only then did he let go of the red sleeve saber, allowing Chu Xiu to escape again. Looking at the bloodstains on his hands, Nia Donglu's eyes revealed a gloomy look. Condensing killing intent to hurt the enemy, and its power was actually similar to Gang Qi. This martial art was very strange. However, if he had reached the inner Qi realm and cultivated Gang Qi, even if he could not release it, he could still condense it in his hands and easily resist this power. That way, Chu Xiu would not be able to escape so easily. Just as Nie Donglu was about to continue his pursuit, Chu Xiu shouted at Lu Fengxian, "Retreat!" Lu Fengxian, who was fighting with Bai Wuji, was also somewhat suppressed. Hearing this, she immediately retreated, retreating into the chaotic crowd. Nie Donglio's eyes showed a hint of hesitation. Should he kill Chu Xiu, or take the secret box? The most precious golden secret box was right in front of him, and he had seen Chu Xiu's strength. Although his cultivation level was higher than his opponent's, it would still be very difficult for him to kill him alone. Looking at the few disciples he brought with him, they were also in a chaotic battle. Just as Nie Donglu was hesitating whether he should call them to kill Chu Xiu together, Bai Wuji had already rushed toward the secret box. Seeing this, Nie Donglu did not hesitate any longer. He directly charged at Bai Wuji, and the two instantly began fighting. During this time, the other secret boxes were also divided among the crowd. Some were taken by the disciples of the big sects, and some were taken by the rogue martial artists. Only the most precious golden secret box was left untouched. Previously, there were people who wanted to take it, but they were instantly killed by Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji. Everyone had learned their lesson. The most precious secret box was targeted by the two of them, and it was theirs to take. Whoever touched it would die. At this time, on the periphery, Lu Fengxian said to Chu Xiu with some pity, "If it weren't for Bai Wuji, the two of us could have easily defeated Nie Donglu." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't worry, let's go for the other secret boxes. Do you see the cyan secret box in that martial artist's hand? You go for that one, and I will go for the secret box in Yu Luchuan's hand. Once we get these two boxes, we will immediately escape." Lu Fengxian was stunned. He did not ask why, but directly began to snatch it. Since the incident with the Chun family, although Lu Fengxian was betrayed by a friend, he had also made another friend. It was absolutely reliable to cooperate with Chu Xiu. At least, at this time, Chu Xiu would not cheat him. At this time, Chu Xiu also stared at the secret box in the hand of one of Yu Luchuan's men. Among the people present, only he knew that among the dozen or so secret boxes, the most precious was not the one that Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji were fighting for, but the one that he was going to snatch. The second was the secret box that Chu Xiu had pointed out to Lu Fengxian. From the beginning, Chu Xiu took the initiative to snatch the secret box, in order to disrupt the rhythm of these people, so that they would fall into a melee as soon as they came up. Moreover, Chu Xiu's target had always been the golden secret box, which gave people a subconscious illusion that the golden secret box was the most precious in this batch of secret boxes. However, in fact, this was indeed the case. This batch of secret boxes was neatly arranged in a row, and the golden secret box was in the center, the one closest to the skeleton. It looked like it was made of the best material, so normally, the thing inside would be the most precious. However, in the fierce battle, everyone's nerves were tense, and they forgot that the preciousness of the thing inside the secret box was not determined by them, but by the owner of the secret box. Maybe some things that were considered trash to them were the most precious in the eyes of the secret box's owner, so they would be placed in the strongest and safest secret box. Chapter 79. During the fight for the secret box, Yu Luchuan obtained a secret box. To be precise, it should be his subordinate who obtained a secret box. As the legitimate son of the Yu family of Bailing, Yu Luchuan's strength was not that weak. However, in this kind of chaotic fight, he still tried his best to protect himself. Although these rogue cultivators were very respectful to warriors who came from big forces like him, and did not dare to touch him, they were now fighting for the secret box. Everyone was fighting. Unless they had the strength like Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji, who could easily kill each other, the rogue cultivators would still dare to attack him in this kind of situation. Anyway, the barefooted were not afraid of the barefooted. The Jianghu was so big. As long as they could get the treasure, they would really dare to kill people. At worst, they could just go somewhere else. The secret box that Yu Luchuan snatched was next to the golden secret box. It should be the second best among this batch of secret boxes. Although two of his subordinates were killed by Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, and one was injured, his subordinate's strength was still the strongest among this group of people. He was feeling proud and ready to let his subordinate hand the secret box to him. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu directly wielded his saber and attacked his subordinate who was holding the secret box. The saber's momentum changed like a fine drizzle. It was extremely powerful and magnificent. Yu Luchuan's subordinates had all seen Chu Xiu's methods. When the warrior saw Chu Xiu coming, he subconsciously wanted to block, but Yu Luchuan was so angry that he shouted, "Idiot! Throw the secret box to me." Even a fool could see that Chu Xiu's target was the secret box on him. As long as he threw the secret box to him, the others would attack together to stop Chu Xiu. At this time, the warrior was already a little flustered. In the face of Chu Xiu's saber, he hurriedly raised the long saber in his hand to block, but it was directly cut into pieces by Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber. The warrior from the Yu clan spat out blood and retreated. Chu Xiu's figure crashed into the warrior's chest. He used the great sacrificial grappling hand to pull the warrior's arm off his body. At the same time, he also took the secret box from the warrior's chest. "Chase him! Stop him!" When Yu Luchuan saw that the secret box that his subordinates had painstakingly obtained was actually taken away by Chu Xiu, he was so angry that he cursed out loud. Unfortunately, it was of no use. After obtaining the secret box, Chu Xiu decisively took it and fled the ruins. With the powerful inner qi that he had cultivated through the Xiantian skill. Unless the Yu clan's warriors had cultivated a special speed-type movement technique, they would definitely not be able to catch up to Chu Xiu. Almost at the same time, Lu Fengxian also snatched the secret box and followed Chu Xiu to escape from the underground palace. On the other side, Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji deliberately looked at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. They were a little surprised that these two people only snatched 2 secret boxes, and then fled. Weren't they a little too anxious? In fact, the Palace of Heaven Severing Demon Venerable was definitely more reliable than the ruins of those big sections. Those big sects often prepared a lot of secret boxes that had never been used, or put all the messy things in the sects into the secret boxes. This also led to the secret boxes excavated from the ruins of those big sects to be mostly empty, or filled with useless things. As for Absolute Heaven Demon Venerable, he was alone. Of course, he wouldn't have prepared so many useless things. The secret boxes in front of him were all precious treasures that he had passed down throughout his life. There were also things that he thought were the most precious. Therefore, there must be treasures in each of the secret boxes. Among so many warriors present, besides Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were the strongest. With their strength, they could have easily snatched more secret boxes. However, they were the first to leave. Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji just glanced at the two of them, and then continued to fight. The fight became more intense and white-hot. In the end, the two of them directly hit the secret box and sent it flying. The spirit array on the secret box would be broken as long as it was stained with blood. At this time, there were hundreds of warriors fighting here. Not to mention being injured, several of them had died. The ground was also covered with blood. It just so happened that part of the spirit array on the secret box hit the ground and was stained with blood, causing the spirit array to fail. The secret box actually rolled on the ground and opened with a gotcha sound, revealing the things inside. This made everyone's eyes widen. They could not believe what they saw. Inside the luxurious secret box that was emitting a golden glow, there was only a silver hairpin and a love poem written on silk. There were so many warriors present, and none of them were blind. They could see at a glance that the silver hairpin was just an ordinary silver hairpin. The craftsmanship was also a bit rough. It was not a secret treasure at all. The same was true for the love poem written on the silk cloth. There was nothing special about it at all. The only special thing was that the poem was quite good. It seemed that this demon master Absolute Heaven was a master of both the pen and the sword when he was alive. Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji glanced at each other. At this time, the two of them did not know how to describe their feelings. At this time, they remembered that for a powerful rogue cultivator like Demon Master Absolute Heaven, the most important thing could be a secret art or a secret treasure. Naturally, it could also be a part of his past love. However, in the fierce battle, they had subconsciously forgotten about this matter. Even now, they could not figure out why Demon Master Absolute Heaven, an ancient devil path powerhouse, would still have such a love history that he could not let go of. He even used the most precious secret box to store it. However, since the thing in this golden secret box was not a secret art or a secret treasure, then the two secret boxes that were closest to the golden secret box must contain a secret art or some precious secret treasure. Nia Donglu and Bai Wuji turned their heads to look, but after a moment, they were stunned to find that the two secret boxes were not in the hands of anyone present. At this time, they remembered that Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian had taken away these two secret boxes. After a long time, Nia Donglu gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "We were tricked." Before, he was still wondering how Chu Xiu could run away so quickly. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu clearly knew that the secret box they were fighting over had nothing good inside, so he deliberately took the initiative to force Nia Donglu and Bai Wuji to fight over it. Then he would join forces with Lu Fengxian to take away the most precious secret box. However, Nia Donglu was only puzzled as to how Chu Xiu knew that the most precious thing in the secret box left by Demon Master Absolute Heaven was not a secret art or a secret treasure. However, Nia Donglu did not delve into this. Although this kind of thing was not common, it was still possible. Although the world had experienced a great calamity in the ancient times, there were still some books and records that had been passed down, including some of the great figures of the ancient times. Therefore, if Chu Xiu read about the love history of the Absolute Heaven Demon Sovereign from other ancient records, it wouldn't be difficult for him to deduce what was the most important thing to the Absolute Heaven Demon Sovereign. In any case, Nia Donglu had suffered a big loss this time. He had led his people to fight back and forth, but in the end it was all for nothing. At this time Bai Wuji, who was next to Nia Donglu, reacted a little slower than Nia Donglu, but obviously he had also figured it out. Looking at the exit of the underground palace, Bai Wuji sneered, "Tisk tsk, Nia Donglu, your East Yen is full of outstanding people. This kid has guts, daring to scheme against us." He actually succeeded in snatching food from the tiger's mouth. Nia Donglu glanced at Bai Wuji, snorted coldly, and did not reply. If it wasn't for Bai Wuji's impatience to snatch the secret box, not giving him time to think, which led to Chu Xiu escaping, things would not have turned out this way. Seeing the ugly expression on Nia Donglu's face, Bai Wuji suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, I don't feel good about being tricked. But now that I can see you, young Manor Lord Nia, suffer, I guess it's worth it. I still have to go to Eastern Qi, so I won't get involved here. But I believe that young Master Nia, you will definitely not let those two go, right? My northern floating snow city does not have much influence in the East Yen, so I am too lazy to send people to hunt them down. I hope that when I return from Eastern Qi, you can finish them off." After saying that, Bai Wuji left with his people. A secret box left behind by an ancient expert was naturally very precious. But this was not the northern floating snow city's territory. Even if he sent people to hunt down Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, not only would it be a waste of energy, but it would also be a waste of effort. So he decided not to get involved in this matter. He would just watch the show. The other people present were not idiots. Hearing the conversation between Nia Donglu and Bai Wuji, and looking at the silver hairpin in the golden box, they could also guess what was going on. They all secretly thought that Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were indeed very daring to scheme against the young master of the Morgue village, and the direct descendant of the northern floating snow city. But thinking about it carefully, this was the inheritance left behind by an ancient demon lord. If it was them, if they had the chance, even if they knew that it would offend the Morgue village and the northern floating snow city, they would still do it. Riches and honor came from danger. For these unaffiliated martial artists with no background, a powerful cultivation technique represented hope for the future. Chapter 80. In fact, there were still many good things in the secret box left behind by the heavenly demon elder. However, the most precious ones had been taken away by Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. The remaining things were not very attractive to Nia Donglu. At this moment, Yulu Chuan was so angry that he cursed at Chu Xiu. He wanted to snatch the secret box back immediately. Only now did he realize that the secret box he had was the most precious one. In the end, it was snatched away by Chu Xiu before he could even warm his hands. Yu Luchuan snorted coldly and said, "It's not over yet. This matter is definitely not over yet." Not only did Chu Xiu offend him, but he also had the most precious secret box left behind by the heavenly demon elder in his hands. This kind of attraction was enough for the Yu clan to send experts to hunt Chu Xiu down. The disciples of the other big clans had the same expression. If the most precious secret box had fallen into Nie Donglio's hands, they would not have dared to snatch it. However, the problem was that the secret box had fallen into Chu Xiu's hands. Hence, they had no qualms about snatching it. Seeing the expressions of the people present, Nie Donglu suddenly said to the crowd, "Everyone fighting for the secret treasures in the ruins has always been based on luck and strength. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were able to obtain it. That is their luck and fortune." Yu Luchuan and the others were stunned when they heard this. What did the young master mean? Was he just going to let Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian take the secret box and leave calmly? One must know that Nie Donglu had such a great reputation in the Jianghu, and was even the strongest among the younger generation of the northern Yan land. It was not only because he was good at winning people over, but also because Nie Donglio's methods were also very decisive. Relying on kindness alone would not be able to establish one's position. Dignity must be placed above kindness. Therefore, to be precise, Yu Luchuan and the others not only respected Nie Donglu, but also feared him. Now that Nie Donglu had been tricked by Chu Xiu, they couldn't just let this matter go, right? As expected, Nie Donglu changed the topic and said, "If this relic was left behind by someone else, it would be fine. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian could have taken it away. But it just so happened that this place was left behind by the ancient demonic path expert, Absolute Heaven Demon Venerable. You have also seen the corpses outside. Even if this Absolute Heaven Devil Venerable passed away, he still wanted to drag so many people to the grave with him. Clearly, he was a vicious and ruthless devil path tyrant. That Chu Xiu's character is extremely extreme. He had once slaughtered the Zhang family of the Shanyang prefecture because of a small matter. If he were to learn the demonic technique left behind by that heavenly demon lord, I'm afraid that he would become a great scourge of the northern Yan kingdom's martial arts. Thus, I've decided that everyone can pursue Chu Xiu on their own. Once you discover his tracks, kill him if you can. Even if you can't kill him, you have to take back his cultivation technique and secret manual, and hand it over to my mortuary manor to be sealed. We absolutely can't let this kind of demonic technique appear in the world. At that time, my mortuary manor will reward you handsomely. Also, the memorial village will draw the faces of Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, and send it to the entire Linzhong commandery, and even the eastern Yan land. We will do our best to help you search for Chu Xiu." Yu Luchuan and the others were overjoyed when they heard this. As expected of the young master, he was able to deal a fatal blow with just one move. With the reputation of the memorial village in the Yan kingdom, and even in the Jianghu, they believed that as long as someone saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, they would definitely pay attention to their movements, making it impossible for them to hide. This was also a convenient place for them. Most importantly, Nie Donglu said that he would use a lot of money as a thank you gift to exchange for the demonic skill in Chu Xiu's hands. This was what everyone was interested in. Most of them came from righteous sections. After obtaining the demonic path cultivation method, they could secretly cultivate it, but the problem was that the demonic path cultivation method was an extreme and rapid path. If they rashly cultivated it, it was really easy for them to cultivate into a big problem. So now that Nie Donglu wanted it, it didn't matter if the memorial village only wanted to completely seal the skill. As long as they could exchange it for benefits, they would profit. Nie Donglu looked at the people who were gloating in front of him, and didn't say anything. Instead, a strange look appeared in his eyes. Actually, with Morgue Manor's current strength, it wasn't that they couldn't send people to chase after Chu Xiu. It was just that Morgue Manor was very busy, and the number of people they could send could be counted on one hand. Although Nie Donglu had a portion of his own power, he was confident that he could chase after Chu Xiu with such power, but it was a little forceful. Therefore, it was better to let Yu Luchuan and the other clans make the first move. With the reputation and informants of the Morgue Manor, the other party would definitely be able to intercept Chu Xiu in a short time. when Yu Luchuan and the others completely forced Chu Xiu into a dead end. The memorial village would then make a move. Wouldn't it be better to save time and effort? Using the least amount of effort to achieve the most important thing. This was Nie Donglio's style of doing things. The people below still didn't know that they were being used by Nie Donglu. They had already made up their minds to immediately send experts to kill Chu Xiu when they returned to their families. At this time, after Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian escaped from the underground palace, the two of them left Liuyang town as fast as they could. After taking a breather, Chu Xiu said to Lu Fengxian, "Brother Lu, it's time to run. We'll go in two different directions and escape separately. We'll leave Linzhong Commandery and even the Yin Kingdom." LV Fengxian said in surprise, "It's just two secret boxes snatched from them. There's no need to be like this, right? The most precious box will definitely fall into the hands of Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji. Do they want to get all the boxes at once? That's so overbearing." Chu Xiu raised the box in his hand and said, "The boxes in our hands are the most precious ones." Then Chu Xiu told Lu Fengxian about his plan. However, he only said that he learned about the history of the ruins from an ancient book. After that, Chu Xiu said to Lu Fengxian, "Brother Lu, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure at the beginning, so I didn't tell you. When we entered the underground palace, there were too many people, so it was even more inconvenient to tell you. Fortunately, Brother Lu, you cooperated with me and stalled Bai Wuji. But this time we are snatching food from the tiger's mouth. Nie Donglu and the others will not let this go. You should know the power of the Morgue village. The other side is too famous in the northern Yan. Although they won't mobilize the entire Morgue village to deal with us for a box. As long as they open their mouth, we will become the target of all the forces in the eastern Yan region. So there is no good way. We can only run. You and I will escape separately. This way, we can divert some attention." Lu Fengxian was shocked after hearing this, but he didn't blame Chu Xiu. After all, without Chu Xiu he couldn't compete with Bai Wuji and Nie Donglu. So Lu Fengxian directly said, "It's nothing. Anyways, I came out this time to travel the world, so it's the same wherever I go. I heard that the scenery in West Chu is pretty good, so I was prepared to travel there." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Since it's like this, then Brother Lu will leave for now. If we delay any longer and Nie Donglu announces the news in the Morgue village's name, it will be hard for us to leave." Lu Fengxian also nodded. He didn't even look at what was inside the box before leaving. Lu Fengxian's personality was like this. Since he chose to believe Chu Xiu, he didn't think that Chu Xiu would trick him about the box. This was the exact opposite of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a very suspicious person in his bones. In fact, he didn't believe anyone, but Chu Xiu would carefully analyze the other person's personality and way of doing things to see how likely the other person was to be trusted. When Chu Xiu possessed absolute strength, he would casually trust a person. That was because even if the other party wanted to deceive him, he could casually slap them to death. Therefore, it was best to have strength. A single person could defeat 10 people. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes were nothing but a sham. Shaking his head, Chu Xiu threw all these random thoughts to the back of his head. He first found a place and opened the box to check his harvest. If the plot hadn't changed, this box actually didn't contain the main cultivation method of Heavenly Demon Sovereign. Because Heavenly Demon Sovereign's cultivation method was too special, it could only be practiced by chance, so he didn't pass it down. However, there was a part of another powerful demonic cultivation method inside. Dripping his blood to open the box, Chu Xiu saw that there were only 3 items inside. One of them was a cultivation jade slip, and the other 2 were 2 books written on an unknown beast's skin. What was strange was that the words on the books were completely blood red. Although Chu Xiu could recognize the words, the handwriting was twisted and very strange. At first glance, Chu Xiu even had the illusion that these cultivation methods were written by a terrifying and strange demon with blood. These 2 cultivation methods had 2 very similar names. One was called Soul Exterminating Heaven and Earth Exterminating Heaven and Earth Exterminating Great Purple Sun Palm. And these 2 cultivation methods were part of the 9 Revolution Demonic Cultivation Method. Yin and Yang Great Sorrow Poem. Chapter 81. The great sorrowful ode of yin and yang intersecting between heaven and earth was an extremely evil demonic martial art. It was composed of 7 cultivation techniques, the great art of soul extinguishing, and the great violet yang hand of heaven and earth extinguishing were 2 of them. It was rumored that on the day this book was completed, a rain of blood fell from the sky, and a strange phenomenon of 100 ghosts crying at night descended. The identity of the person who wrote this book was also a mystery. Some people even suspected that this book was not left behind by a human. Anyway, no matter what, the yin and yang sorrowful poem of heaven and earth intersecting was definitely one of the top demonic cultivation methods. As for its ranking of the 9 revolutions, it was actually somewhat uncertain. This was because in the original plot, no one had completely collected this cultivation method, so no one knew how powerful this cultivation method was in the end. It was possible that it had reached the 9 revolutions, but it was also possible that it had reached the level of a paragon-level cultivation technique. In any case, among the few martial arts that appeared in the Jianghu, the lowest was evaluated to be rank 5, while the highest was rank 8. A portion of them had the power of rank 8. It was reasonable for the 7 cultivation methods to fuse into one and reach rank 9. Thus, the great compassion prose of heaven and earth intersecting yin-yang was evaluated as rank 9. The heaven extinguishing earth annihilating great violet yang palm in Chu Xiu's hand was a 5th revolution cultivation technique. It belonged to the weakest of the yin and yang great sorrow poem. It was a palm technique that condensed the power of the purple yang devil flame in one's hand. When it struck the opponent's body, the purple yang devil flame would enter the body. If it was light, the person would suffer the pain of the devil flame burning their heart. When it reached the grand completion stage, this palm could burn the opponent's blood, qi, and internal organs into ashes. On the surface, there would only be a purple palm print, but in reality, the person had already been burnt into a piece of human skin. However, the requirements of the yin and yang great sorrow fu of heaven and earth were too high. Even the lowest level of the great purple yang hand of heaven's end and earth annihilation required one to be in the inner supreme qi realm. The current Chu Xiu could only use a little bit of it, and was unable to unleash the power of the purple yang demonic flame. As for heaven extinguishing earth extinguishing soul shifting art, it was a mystic art that cultivated mental power and primordial spirit, and was evaluated to be at the 6th rank. However, mental strength was a rather mysterious thing, especially the soul. The great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul shifting required a long time to cultivate. Moreover, it was not very useful in a face-to-face battle. It could be considered as a miraculous technique that required extraordinary skills to achieve victory. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to the cultivation transmission jade slip. Compared to the text-based descriptions of cultivation techniques, the cultivation inheritance jade slip was actually much simpler and faster. In an instant, it could allow a cultivator to understand all the cultivation technique descriptions. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Chu Xiu's expression turned a little strange. This jade slip contained a saber art, the Avicii 3 sabers. In the original plot, this saber technique had appeared. It was a very evil saber technique, a standard demonic martial art. However, even demonic martial artists did not dare to practice it because the backlash was too strong. The Avicii Dao was the most evil bottom of hell. It was also known as the Avicii Hell. If one fell into the Avicii Hell, they would suffer the pain of thousands of reincarnations, never to be freed. This Avicii 3 sabers took the meaning of the Avicii Hell. It was an extremely evil saber produced by the condensation of the world's hatred. It was extremely evil. After practicing it, the cultivator would be controlled by the power produced in the Avicii Hell, and become an irrational puppet. Thus, they would completely fall into the Avicii Hell, and become extremely crazy. They would start to kill innocent people. They would either be destroyed by the righteous martial artists or die from the backlash of the power. Moreover, the level evaluation of this saber technique was also very interesting. It was called the 5th rank, but in fact it could reach the 6th rank or even higher. The reason why the ranking of the Avicii 3 sabers was so low was very simple. For so many years, there were many martial artists who practiced the Avicii 3 sabers, but none of them had a good ending. It was simply a suicidal saber technique. Moreover, no one could practice it to the extreme. In the end, the Avicii Three Sabers became notorious. Except for those martial artists who really had a blood feud and wanted to perish together with others, almost no one was willing to practice this saber technique. Even those notorious demonic martial artists were the same. There was even a rumor that this saber technique came from the Avicii Hell. It was a cursed saber technique, and it was unknown how to practice it. Therefore, over time, no one in the Jianghu practiced this saber technique. No one knew whether it was completely lost or not. Thinking of this saber technique, Chu Xiu was also a little confused. Should he practice it or not? The Avicii Three Sabers was notorious in the future, but its power was also unquestionable. Even if it had so many shortcomings, it could still be ranked as a fifth-rank martial art. If he did not practice it, it would be a pity. After thinking about it, Chu Xiu finally decided to practice the Avicii Three Sabers. It was not because Chu Xiu was blinded by his greed for power, but because he had a certain degree of confidence in practicing the Avicii Three Sabers. In the original plot, there were not many people who were very strong who practiced the Avicii Three Sabers. In other words, those who had 8 or 9 rank martial arts would not practice this kind of thing that hurt others and themselves. Therefore, the power of the Avicii Three Sabers, at least on the surface, had the greatest impact on those martial artists who were weak and mentally weak. Chu Xiu thought that his mind was strong enough. Of course, this was only Chu Xiu's confidence. His real confidence came from the glazed golden silk goo, and the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting that he had just obtained. The glazed golden silk goo was born from the glazed Buddha bone of the Great Light Temple's eminent monk. It naturally had a kind of calming and focused power that could resist mental demons. This was also one of the uses of the glazed golden silk goo. It could be said that the glazed golden silk goo had a natural restraining effect on the Avicii Three Sabers. Other than the glazed golden silk goo, the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting could also restrain the Avicii Three Sabers to a certain extent. The great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting mainly cultivated one's own mental strength. Moreover, those with strong mental strength would naturally not be easily corroded by the power of the Avicii Three Sabers. With these 2 layers of insurance, Chu Xiu had the confidence to practice this kind of demonic saber that hurt others and himself. However, Chu Xiu was not in a hurry to practice these 2 martial arts. Instead, he chose to leave Linzhong Commandery as soon as possible and hide in Shangmeng Mountain. Linzhong Commandery did not have many barren mountains and dense forests, so it was impossible to hide for a long time. As long as the Morgue Manor issued a warrant for Chu Xiu could guarantee that there would be no place for him in Linzhong Commandery. Therefore, Chu Xiu had to hide in Shangmeng Mountain as soon as possible. The entire Shangmeng Mountain was larger than Wei Commandery. Even if Nie Donglio's father, Nie Renlong, threw everyone from the Morgue Manor into Shangmeng Mountain, it would only be a drop in the ocean, not to mention Nie Donglu looking for him. However, what Chu Xiu did not expect was that Nie Donglio's speed was much faster than his. Nie Donglu did not return to the Morgue Manor to issue an order. Instead, he used his reputation to mobilize the entire Linzhong Commandery to hunt down Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. Of course, the main target was still Chu Xiu. He attracted more hatred than Lu Fengxian. After noticing that something was wrong, Chu Xiu immediately changed his obvious black warrior suit into green coarse hemp clothes, wore a wide bamboo hat, and blackened his face. He put the red sleeve blade into a secret space box and replaced it with a long sword. Only then did he begin to carefully flee toward Shangmeng Mountain. Chu Xiu did not practice disguise. This was the safest method he could think of. Otherwise, if he covered himself up in broad daylight, it would only attract more attention. Now Chu Xiu was almost the same as the lowest level of Jianghu. As long as it was not someone close to him, they would not be able to recognize him. 7 days later, in a small town outside of Shanyang Prefecture, Chu Xiu sat in a corner of a tavern. There was some food in front of him. He ate at a leisurely pace, not showing any sense of urgency at all. In these 7 days, the forces of the Linzhong Commandery were fast in their pursuit, but Chu Xiu was not slow in hiding either. Actually, if it was just the local forces of the Linzhong Commandery, it would be easier. After all, The real elites of the morgue had not made a move. Nie Donglu only wanted to kill with one strike, and did not want to waste time looking for people. However, the troublesome thing was that the local forces of the Linzhong Commandery had actually asked the Anemophilia of Wind Sweeping Building to investigate his whereabouts. Professionals were professionals after all. Chu Xiu didn't know what method they had used to lock onto his position. In any case, Chu Xiu could always see cultivators from the major factions of the Linzhong Commandery wandering around him these past few days. Fortunately, they didn't discover him. After going around in circles, Chu Xiu returned to Shanyang Prefecture. However, this was the last stop. After eating, Chu Xiu only needed to walk for a few more days before he could enter Shangmeng Mountain. In fact, Chu Xiu did not want to rest here at first. However, he had used up all his food and was now running for his life. There were warriors of the Linzhong Commandery all around him. Chu Xiu had to maintain his physical and mental strength at its peak. Otherwise, if he was really discovered, Chu Xiu would not even have the strength to fight back. Chapter 82. In the tavern, there were a lot of merchants and some wandering martial artists eating and resting here. It was raining heavily outside, so they were too lazy to continue their journey. At this moment, the door of the tavern was pushed open, and more than a dozen martial artists walked in. The one at the front was very young and dressed like a young master of an aristocratic family. This man was Shanyang Prefecture's Tao family's eldest young master, Tao Yi. Next to him was a 40-years-old steward who frowned and said, "Eldest young master, we will arrive at Shanyang Prefecture in a day. Let's go back and rest. The herbs we bought from Wei County can't be exposed to the rain." Tao Yi looked impatient and said, "Nonsense, anyway, we have been in the rain for several days. One more day won't make much of a difference. From Wei County to Shanyang Prefecture. How many days has it been since we ate a hot meal? Anyway, this young master can't stand it. Father, you really want to go to Wei County to buy herbs in this season? You can just buy them directly from Qingyuan Town. Why do you have to go to Wei County? How much money can you save?" The tavern wasn't big, and now with so many people pouring in, it immediately felt crowded, even to the point that it couldn't sit down. Tao Yi frowned and shouted at the cultivators on Chu Xiu's side, "All of you, get out of my way and scram." Tao Yi's overbearing behavior caused the other Jianghu people to reveal a hint of anger in their eyes. Immediately, someone was about to flare up, but he was immediately pressed down by someone else. Someone whispered a few words into his ear, and pointed out Tao Yi's identity. Only then did those Jianghu people give up and obediently prepared to leave. They couldn't afford to offend the Tao family's young master. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes, but he didn't say anything. He hurriedly ate 2 mouthfuls of food and prepared to leave. He didn't need to care about a small character that he could easily pinch to death. If his whereabouts were exposed because of teaching him a lesson, it wouldn't be worth it. But at this time, Tao Yi saw that Chu Xiu's movements were a little slow. He was already a little impatient, so he suddenly snorted and directly walked over, slapped Chu Xiu's bamboo hat, and reprimanded. "Didn't you hear me telling you to get out? Dilly-dallying. Do you want this young master to invite you out?" The moment the bamboo hat was thrown away, Tao Yi saw Chu Xiu's dark face. He didn't care at first, but at this time he seemed to suddenly think of something, and his eyes suddenly showed a touch of panic. Although he forced himself to calm down, his cheeks couldn't help but twitch. Tao Yi turned around calmly and glanced at the food on the table. He snorted disdainfully and said, "Really, this small place can't even cook well. What are these things? Pig food? Forget it, I'm not eating anymore. I'll go back to Shanyang Prefecture." The manager of the caravan was dumbfounded. He didn't know what this young master was up to. "Just now, you were the one who said that you hadn't eaten a hot meal for a few days, and now you're complaining that the food is bad. It seems like the young master's temper is getting worse every year." However, at this moment, no one noticed the uncontrollable fear on Tao Yi's face. He knew Chu Xiu. Although he hadn't spoken to Chu Xiu, he had seen Chu Xiu a few times at the Shanyang Prefecture auction. Originally, he didn't have a deep impression of him, but as Chu Xiu did these things, his impression of Chu Xiu became extremely deep. Not to mention the destruction of the Zhang family, Others couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the death of Zhang Baitao and the other three. Even if they heard it, they wouldn't say anything. But the forces of Shanyang Prefecture were very concerned. They didn't expect that Zhang Baitao, who came from the Ba Mountain Sword sect, would still fail to kill Chu Xiu with 3 Khanate experts and lose miserably. And as Tao Yi brought the caravan back from Wei Prefecture to the Yan Kingdom, the news about Chu Xiu had spread throughout Linzhong Prefecture. In the fight for the secret box in the Liuyang Mountain Relic, he had schemed against the young master of the Morgue village, Nie Donglu, and Bai Wuji, the 2 Jianghu elites of the fluttering Snow City, in front of everyone. His courage was boundless, and he had no scruples. From that moment on, Tao Yi was certain that this person was a fanatic who had no scruples at all. For the sake of profit, he would do anything. But his state was too high. His opponents were the big clans of Linzhong Prefecture, and even the famous sects like the Morgue village and the fluttering Snow City in the northern Yan. They had nothing to do with the Tao family, a small family that could only show off in Shanyang Prefecture. But Tao Yi had never thought that he would meet Chu Xiu here. He knew what kind of situation Chu Xiu was in now. He was wanted by the Morgue village, and was being hunted by all the martial arts masters in Linzhong Prefecture. If he sold his information, he could get a lot of money. But the problem was, Tao Yi did not dare to do it now. At the moment, Tao Yi only hoped that Chu Xiu did not notice anything wrong with him. Everything had to wait until he left this place. But unfortunately, things did not go according to his wishes. Just as Tao Yi was about to leave, Chu Xiu said faintly, "Young Master Tao, are you going to leave just like that?" Tao Yi's frightened eyes could not hide from Chu Xiu. Although he pretended to be calm on the surface, Chu Xiu could still hear the sound of his heart beating when he was nervous. Tao Yi turned his head and pretended to be calm. "What do you mean? Do you know me?" Chu Xiu did not speak. He just slowly took out his red sleeve knife from the secret box. The moment he saw the red sleeve knife, Tao Yi suddenly panicked. He hurriedly shouted, "Chu Xiu, my Tao family has no grievances with you. Even if I know your information, I will not say it. If you let me go, I promise not to leak your information." Hearing that the person in front of them was Chu Xiu, who was wanted by the Morgue village, the Tao family stewards were suddenly shocked. But then they secretly thought that it was not good. It was okay if Tao Yi did not speak before. Now he said it in public. This was simply forcing Chu Xiu to kill him. Sure enough, the moment Tao Yi shouted those words, a crimson saber light had already appeared in front of him. No, Tao Yi roared angrily. He didn't want to die here. He didn't want to carelessly lose his life here because he had slapped Chu Xiu's bamboo hat away. He still had the hidden weapon of Qianji sect given to him by his father. It was used to save his life in critical moments. It was said that if used well, it could even hurt a Xiantian warrior. But as soon as he put his hand in his pocket, Chu Xiu's knife had already arrived. The crimson knife light flashed and scarlet blood splashed. Tao Yi's eyes were still flickering with unwillingness as his head fell to the ground. He was the only legitimate son of the Tao family. Such a great family business was still waiting for him to inherit. But he died here today. The cause of his death was extremely funny. He was 23 years old and died because of his dirty hands. If he had not hit Chu Xiu's bamboo hat and seen something he should not have seen, he would not have died here. When the steward of the Tao family's caravan saw this scene, he immediately screamed in horror. More than a dozen members of the caravan began to flee frantically. The rest of the people in the tavern, except for a few ordinary people who really did not know martial arts, even smashed the walls and ran away screaming. Recently, Chu Xiu's reputation in Linzhong Commandery was very big. It should be said that those who could be wanted by the righteous manner and chased by the whole Jianghu forces in Linzhong Commandery were all famous. Not only did LV Yangshan plot against Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji, but other things that Chu Xiu had done in Linzhong Commandery were also dug out. Zhang family of Shanyang Prefecture, Zhang Baitao and the other 3 people, and Cold River Prefecture also had his traces. After all, there was a fish from the Black Tiger gang who had escaped the net in Cold River Prefecture. Although they had been scared out of their wits, they still spread the news about Chu Xiu. In this way, the number of Xiantian warriors who had died in the hands of Chu Xiu had already exceeded 10. Fierce man. Absolutely fierce man. Hearing the screams around him, Chu Xiu did not chase after them. He could not catch up anyway. Dozens of people fled in all directions. Even if dozens of pigs ran like this, Chu Xiu would not be able to kill them all in a short time. He just looked around and sighed. He was only one step away, but in the end, he was forced to kill. At this moment, a stern shout came from outside. Chu Xiu, stop hiding and come out to die. Outside the ruined tavern, 4 inner strong realm warriors surrounded Chu Xiu in the center. Their eyes revealed a glint of dense killing intent. They had been searching in the vicinity before. Now that they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. Seeing Chu Xiu, the 4 inner supreme realm martial artists sighed inwardly. The young manor master's predictions were like that of a god. Chu Xiu was indeed in this place. Originally, the major forces of Linzhong Commandery had spread out to search. Among them, they had found traces of Lu Fengxian, but Lu Fengxian had escaped. Chu Xiu was even better at hiding. Even with the intervention of wind-sweeping building, they had not been able to dig out Chu Xiu. Later, it was Nie Donglu who personally made the decision to ignore other places and only focus on the area near Wei Commandery. The reason was simple. Since Lu Fengxian had escaped to West Chu, Chu Xiu could only choose to escape to Wei Commandery or the extreme north of Liaodong. The latter was the territory of the extreme north's floating snow city. If Chu Xiu escaped there, they could not do anything about it. Naturally, the extreme north's floating snow city would take care of him. Therefore, the area near Wei Commandery was the place where they strictly searched and sent most of the inner strong realm warriors here. They did not expect that Chu Xiu would really appear here. Chapter 83. For internal strong realm martial artists besieging an innate realm martial artist. Not to mention watching it, even hearing it sounded like bullying. In fact, it was Chu Xiu's bad luck. Most of the people who participated in the search were below the internal strong realm. Because it was raining outside, these 4 internal strong realm martial artists were too lazy to search in the heavy rain. They gathered together and prepared to find a place to take shelter from the rain. Anyway, as long as they found Chu Xiu, the other martial artists would naturally make noise and send them a message. Therefore, as soon as there was movement here, 4 internal strong realm martial artists were immediately attracted. One of the 4 sneered and said, "Everyone, let's not talk about who gets the secret box from Chu Xiu first. But his life will be taken by the Yu clan of the Bailing." The other 3 nodded indifferently. Anyway, to them, Chu Xiu's life did not matter. They were mainly here for the secret box. It seemed that they had also heard that Chu Xiu had offended the Yu clan of the Bailing during the treasure hunt in Luyang Mountain. 3 innate rankers had been killed by Chu Xiu, and 1 had been seriously injured. Moreover, the secret box in Chu Xiu's hands had been snatched from the Yu clan of the Northern Mountain. It was normal for the Yu clan to want Chu Xiu's life to regain some face. Just as the 4 people did not take Chu Xiu seriously, and were still discussing how to kill Chu Xiu, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and the crimson saber light was already slashing towards the internal strong realm martial artist from the Yu clan of the Bailing. This was a strike that Chu Xiu had condensed all his strength and exerted to the extreme. Azure Dragon goes to sea, crimson rain falls. The Yu clan's internal strong realm martial artist was still cupping his hands towards the other 3, thanking them for giving him face. But in the blink of an eye, Chu Xiu's saber had already arrived in front of him. The bright red saber light was like a blood-soaked green dragon lurking under the surface of the sea. When it was not attacking, it hid in the depths of the 9 nether abyss, but when it attacked, it broke through the sea and soared into the 9 heavens. In particular, Chu Xiu had condensed the killing intent of the piercing the sun and moon technique onto the blade. The power contained in the blade was even more frightening. The inner strong realm martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing felt his heart skip a beat. He subconsciously retreated, and a green light erupted from the long sword in his hand. 9 sword flowers bloomed in front of him. Although a martial artist in the inner force realm couldn't release his gang qi, it wasn't a problem for him to condense it in his hands or weapons. However, when the saber and the sword collided, The power of Chu Xiu's saber suddenly exploded. The power of piercing the sun and moon immediately shattered the Gang Qi, and the inner Gang Realm martial artist's long sword actually shattered. In his shock, the inner Force Realm martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing subconsciously gave way. Chu Xiu didn't continue fighting, and took the opportunity to run directly towards the dense forest on the other side of the path. The other three people were just about to attack, but they didn't expect that the Yu clan of Bailing would only block one move before giving way. The three people complained. "Old Yu, what the hell are you doing? You can even retreat when an inner Force Realm martial artist is facing an innate realm martial artist. Does your Yu clan not want to take revenge?" The Yu clan martial artist from the Yu clan of Bailing said angrily. "What do you know? There's something strange about Chu Xiu. The strength of that saber strike just now was extremely shocking. Moreover, he had a secret technique that allowed him to burst forth with a might comparable to Gang Qi in the Xiantian realm. If I hadn't retreated just now, that saber strike would have injured me. Think about it, if Chu Xiu was really a simple person, how could he defeat the young master and the people from the northern fluttering snow city on Liang Mountain? Stop talking nonsense. Go after him." The three people couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with the Yu clan of Bailing. They immediately chased after Chu Xiu. At this moment, Chu Xiu had to thank the rain. An inner Force Realm martial artist had sharp senses, but it was raining heavily outside. It would more or less affect the four people's senses and cover up Chu Xiu's tracks. This also caused the four people to be unable to catch up with Chu Xiu for a while in the dense forest. The four people looked at each other and sneered. They immediately spread out and began to search around the dense forest towards the center. Although Linzhong Commandery was called Linzhong Commandery, it referred to the time when the Northern Yan Kingdom had just been established. This place was mostly barren mountains and dense forests, and was rarely visited by humans. However, there were not many large forests in Linzhong Commandery at this time. With the four people working together to search, they would be able to force Chu Xiu out sooner or later. At this moment, in the dense forest, Chu Xiu's expression was incomparably cold. There was no panic, only calmness. A strong murderous aura surrounded him. The aura was a little vague, but Chu Xiu could feel that the other party was probably trying to surround him. It was not that Chu Xiu had not killed an inner Force Realm martial artist before. Although it was extremely difficult for Chu Xiu to kill Su Chongyang, after killing Su Chongyang, Chu Xiu had also gained a lot of experience in dealing with inner Force Realm martial artists. He had also refined the purple dogwood, and his strength had improved greatly. In Chu Xiu's opinion, any one of these four inner Force Realm martial artists was actually not as good as Su Chongyang. After all, Su Chongyang was from the Giant Spirit Gang. The competition between him and the martial artists of the six gangs was fierce. Su Chongyang's strength was definitely stronger than these martial artists from ordinary families. And most importantly, the Giant Spirit Gang's 72 Paths Giant Spirit Martial Arts was a collection of the Giant Spirit Gang's several generations of powerhouses. It was inclusive and exceptionally powerful. In terms of martial arts, Su Chongyang also had the advantage. Back then Chu Xiu could kill Su Chongyang. Now it would not be difficult to kill them one-on-one. However, the problem was that the four of them joined forces. Chu Xiu could only run for his life. He had to find a way to defeat them one by one. Feeling that one of the murderous auras was getting closer, Chu Xiu deliberately left more marks on the ground for the martial artist to catch up. After being washed away by the heavy rain, the marks would be immediately washed away after being seen by one person. After going back and forth like this, one of them had already pulled away from the other three. Chu Xiu stopped and retreated a long way back. He hid in a tree. A moment later, a martial artist chased after him. It was the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing. The marks left behind by him retreating were actually different from those left behind by normal walking. However, because of the heavy rain, all the marks had become fainter. The martial artist did not react and continued to follow the marks quickly. Just as he passed by the tree where Chu Xiu was hiding, Chu Xiu suddenly exploded. The aura on his body exploded, and the red sleeve saber slashed down. The surrounding heavy rain was completely cut apart by the power of the saber. The murderous aura tore through the curtain of rain, and slashed towards the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing. This sudden saber and the sudden burst of murderous aura made the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing feel alarmed. However, Chu Xiu's saber was too vicious and swift. When he turned around, Chu Xiu's saber had already reached him. In a hurry, the Yu family's inner strength realm martial artist struck out with his palm. Green vigor chi appeared on his palm. He wanted to slap Chu Xiu's saber off course, but unfortunately, it was too late. His weapon was a sword. When he was in the Yu family, he mainly practiced sword techniques. His martial arts could only be said to be sloppy and ordinary. He could not be compared to Su Chongyang at all. In the past, Su Chongyang could almost slap Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber out of his hand with his bare hands. Now, when the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing's palm landed, it was directly negated by the murderous aura. Instead, it stabbed his left palm and made it bleed. The crimson saber light slashed down. Even though the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing tried his best to dodge, he was still hit by the saber light. He immediately grunted and one of his arms flew to the side. Blood splattered everywhere. Having one of his arms chopped off, the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing became even more ferocious. He used the fingers of his right hand as a sword and displayed the Yu family's secret mountain calming sword technique. Although the force of his fingers was small, it was majestic. It landed on Chu Xiu's red sleeve saber and let out a loud clang, causing Chu Xiu's figure to retreat. At this moment, Chu Xiu took advantage of this opportunity to sheath his saber and displayed the great grappling hand. As his arms entangled, no matter how majestic his opponent's mountain calming sword technique was, he could not break free from Chu Xiu's grasp with only one arm. Chu Xiu directly tore off his right arm. For a martial artist, having both arms crippled was basically no different from death. However, it must be said that the vitality of a martial artist in the inner strength realm was very tenacious. Even without both arms, the martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing channeled his inner force into his legs and kicked at Chu Xiu. He was not trying to fight with his life on the line. He just wanted to live. In his current state, there was no way he could escape. He could only hold on to Chu Xiu until the other three arrived. At that time he could live, but Chu Xiu had to die. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu immediately frowned. Unable to kill him in one blow, it was troublesome to deal with a martial artist in the inner strength realm. Of course, it was only slightly troublesome. The martial artist from the Yu family of Bailing had not learned any leg techniques. It was impossible for him to simply hold on to Chu Xiu. After a few moves, he was stabbed in the chest by Chu Xiu's saber. Just as he was about to breathe his last, three figures quickly rushed towards him. He could only close his eyes with a hint of unwillingness. He was still one step too late. Chapter 84. The warrior from the Yu family of Bailing who was killed by Chu Xiu sighed that he was a step too slow. In fact, Chu Xiu was also sighing that he was a step too slow. He did not expect this internal strength realm warrior to be so difficult to deal with. Of course, the ones who were the most shocked at this moment were the three people who were chasing after Chu Xiu. Looking at the two broken arms on the ground and the warrior from the Yu family of Bailing hanging from Chu Xiu's blade, the three of them could not help but feel a storm in their hearts. How long had it been? It was at most the time it took to brew a cup of tea. In the end, the warrior from the Yu clan of the Northern Mountain was killed by Chu Xiu. The three of them had to re-evaluate Chu Xiu's strength. He was so strong that he did not seem like a warrior of the innate realm. After seeing this scene, the three of them no longer dared to look down on Chu Xiu like before. They surrounded Chu Xiu with a serious look in their eyes. It was not rare for an innate realm warrior to kill an internal strength expert. For example, Nie Donglu, the young master of the morgue, and Bai Wuji, who looked like a playboy but was actually called a lunatic by the people of the northern fluttering snow city, all had such strength. But now Chu Xiu, a rogue cultivator who was born in the wilderness, had actually displayed such strength. This was a little too much. If they could not kill him today, endless troubles would be waiting for them. The three of them exchanged glances. Without saying a word, they began to attack Chu Xiu in a frenzy. In that instant, Chu Xiu felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. He could rely on his strong explosive force to fight against an internal strength realm warrior. But no matter how strong his explosive force was, he could not kill all three of them. After only a few moves, Chu Xiu was beaten back by the three of them, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Although it was not glorious for three internal strength realm warriors to besiege an innate realm warrior, it was still effective. At least for the current Chu Xiu, he had been forced into a dead end. Holding the red sleeve blade, Chu Xiu wondered if there was any other way out, and if he should use his trump card. Chu Xiu's trump card was very simple. It was the 3 blades of Avicii. For the past few days, Chu Xiu had been running for his life, and had not started to practice the cultivation method that he had obtained from the secret box. However, because the 3 blades of Avicii had been imprinted into Chu Xiu's mind through the technique transmission jade slip, Chu Xiu was constantly visualizing the power of this blade in his mind, even when he was fleeing for his life. It could be said that if Chu Xiu really made a move now, he was confident that he could make the first blade. However, as for the power of this blade, and whether Chu Xiu could control this power, even Chu Xiu himself could not be sure without going through detailed deliberation and experiments. Just as Chu Xiu clenched the red sleeve blade in his hand, and was ready to fight for the last time, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The other 3 martial artists who were chasing him also felt the same. They were closing in on Chu Xiu, and their movements also stopped. Raindrops fell from the sky, but unknowingly, the surroundings began to become silent. Whether it was the sound of raindrops falling to the ground or the sound of the breeze blowing through the forest, they all strangely disappeared. Amidst the hazy drizzle, a man walked out of the rain mist. His figure seemed to have blended into the world. When the raindrops were about to fall on him, they strangely deviated from their original positions and slid to the surroundings. It was very strange, but also very harmonious, as if he was supposed to be like this. When that person came closer, everyone present could clearly see the other person's attire. It was very strange. The person who walked over was wearing a pair of gold-rimmed boots and a black tight-fitting warrior suit. On his head was a very strange black conical hat. The iron conical hat was inlaid with an abstract golden dragon pattern as a decoration. The most peculiar thing was that he wore a black iron mask on his face. The style of the mask was very simple, only revealing the eyes. There was no facial expression at all. At first glance, it looked very ordinary, but at a closer look, it gave people a kind of creepy feeling. Moreover, it wasn't a bear mask. On the mask, there was a star diagram of the Star of Sin, one of the 36 celestial dipper star diagrams. The moment they saw this person, the 3 people who were chasing after Chu Xiu immediately trembled. They tremblingly spat out 3 words. Blue. Blue Dragon Society. The person faintly said in a hoarse voice, Mountains Lu family, Chenling's Chao family, Ling State's Yin family. What a coincidence, your 3 families are all gathered together. Since you know who I am, then you should know what I'm here for. Your 3 families have forced someone into a corner. Someone has taken out a secret treasure to buy the lives of your 3 families. Since you all happen to be here today, then hand over your lives. The 3 people's eyes revealed a trace of fear. Without saying anything, they directly split into 3 directions and turned to flee. The mysterious person's figure didn't move. He took a step forward, and the drizzle in front of him actually connected into a line, condensing into a thin sword. As he waved his hands, the invisible raindrops condensed together, and turned into a powerful sword chi that tore through the void. With a loud bang, it directly blasted a fist-sized hole in the chest of a warrior. At this time, he directly grabbed at the warrior on the other side with one hand. Powerful gang chi condensed in his hand, and the surrounding raindrops dodged to the side, forming a hole. As he clenched his fist, there was a loud bang, and the warrior was forcibly crushed in midair by him. The corpse was blown up into minced meat by the gang chi. The last warrior ran a little further away. The mysterious person only took a light step forward, but it was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch. He directly crossed a distance of more than 100 feet. He gently placed a hand on the warrior's neck, and the head was already in his hand. The corpse actually ran more than a dozen steps forward before falling to the ground. Crushing. It was an absolute crushing. Chu Xiu couldn't see the strength of the other party, but his strength was definitely several realms higher than those three. To be able to injure people with Gang Qi from more than 100 feet away, the other party was 100% in existence that surpassed the physical invulnerability realm. He might even have reached the realm of 3 flowers at one's prominence or 5 Qis in the origin, or even a great master in the realm of oneness of heaven and man. Of course, the strength of the other party was no longer important. What was important was the identity of the other party. Just now, the 3 people had already revealed the identity of the other party. Chu Xiu could also recognize the other party's clothing. If there was no accident, this person should be one of the 4 spirits of the 4 spirits fusion. He was a member of the largest assassin organization in Jianghu, the Blue Dragon Society. The Blue Dragon Society, the White Tiger Hall, the Vermilion Bird Pavilion, and the Black Tortoise Sect. These 4 sects were known as the 4 spirits fusion. Its roots could be traced back to the top sect of the ancient times, the 4 Symbols Divine Sect. These 4 sects could be said to be the inheritors of the 4 Symbols Divine Sect. However, due to various reasons, they eventually split up and developed on their own. The strangest thing was that each of them developed into a top force in Jianghu. Therefore, they were also known as the 4 Spirits Fusion. Among them, the Blue Dragon Society was a powerful assassin organization that could be found throughout the entire Jianghu. The killer from the Blue Dragon Society threw away the head in his hand and took a step forward. He arrived in front of Chu Xiu and looked at Chu Xiu with interest. Chu Xiu also looked at the other party. There was no hostility in his eyes. In fact, for an expert like this who could kill him with one move, hostility was the last thing he needed. After a while, the expert from the Blue Dragon Society suddenly said, "Chu Xiu, I've heard of you." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "In the entire Linzhong Commandery, there are probably only a few people who haven't heard of my name." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, the interest in the eyes of the expert from the Blue Dragon Society became even stronger. Interesting. In the past few years, there weren't many people who could make Nie Donglu suffer a loss. There weren't many who could kill an inner invulnerability expert at the innate realm. Are you interested in joining the Blue Dragon Society? The things you snatch from Nie Donglu are treasures to others, but the Blue Dragon Society doesn't care. Join the Blue Dragon Society and your life will be guaranteed by the Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu pointed at the corpses of the 3 martial artists on the ground and said indifferently, "If I say no, I'll probably end up like the 3 of them." The expert from the Blue Dragon Society shook his head and said, "That won't happen. The Blue Dragon Society has rules. When no one pays us, we don't like to kill innocent people. Similarly, the Blue Dragon Society will only protect our own people. I'm a very reasonable person. If I didn't appear just now, you would have been killed or captured by those 3. Now there are many people out there looking for your whereabouts. If you aren't a member of the Blue Dragon Society, why would I protect you? I'll bring 3 more inner invulnerability realm martial artists in front of you. Then leave and return to your previous state. That's reasonable, isn't it?" Chu Xiu didn't say that he had a trump card to break out of this situation. He only smiled bitterly and said, "That's no different from courting death. However, I just want to ask, why did Senior suddenly ask me to join the Blue Dragon Society on a whim? Or is it because the Blue Dragon Society is so simple in recruiting assassins nowadays?" The expert from the Blue Dragon Society stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "I didn't ask you to join the Blue Dragon Society on a whim. It's because my Blue Dragon Society, to be more precise, my branch is lacking people. It's so lacking that I, the branch leader, have to personally deal with 3 small fries. Therefore, whenever I see someone I feel is suitable, I'll try to recruit them. As for the conditions for the Blue Dragon Society to recruit assassins, there aren't many. I'm the branch leader, so naturally, I have the final say." Chapter 85. In the face of the Blue Dragon Society's recruitment, Chu Xiu didn't refuse. He didn't have the qualifications to refuse. However, when he heard that the other party was a branch leader, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Seeing the surprise in Chu Xiu's eyes, The Blue Dragon Society expert pointed at the black iron mask on his face and said calmly, "Blue Dragon Society's Big Dipper 36 divisions. I'm the branch leader of this Heavenly Sin branch. What's so strange about that?" Chushio shook his head. Right now, there was nothing strange about it. However, he remembered something about this branch leader. If the Heavenly Sin branch didn't have a new branch leader, then this person in front of him would stir up quite a storm in the entire northern Yen land. Now that Chushio couldn't escape from the Linzhong commandery, he had no choice but to agree to this person's request. He could only wait to be hunted down. However, Chushio needed time to recuperate. Joining the Blue Dragon Society was a good choice. As for whether it was a good choice or a bad one, Chushio wasn't sure. Most importantly, Chushio knew that this Blue Dragon Society's Heavenly Sin branch leader would stir up quite a storm in the northern Yen land in the future. If Chushio followed this person, he might be able to get a share of the pie. At this time, Chushio suddenly asked, "But what if I leak the Blue Dragon Society's secrets or escape from the Blue Dragon Society?" The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader asked in return, "Does it feel good to be hunted?" Chushio shook his head. The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader said calmly, "If you betray the Blue Dragon Society, your fate will be 10 times worse than this, maybe even 100 times worse." Lowering his head, Chushio slightly raised his eyebrows. If he really betrayed the Blue Dragon Society, his strength would be 10 times stronger, maybe even 100 times stronger. Chushio cupped his hands and said to the Blue Dragon Society's branch leader, "May I ask how I should address you, Sir Branch Leader?" The Blue Dragon Society's branch leader casually waved his hand and said, "Most people in the Blue Dragon Society don't have names, only code names. I'm the branch leader of the Heavenly Sin branch. Since you are my subordinate, just call me branch leader. If you meet other branch leaders in the future, just add their name in front." Looking at the surrounding corpses, the Heavenly Sin division leader shook his head and said, "Killing is not allowed. Come with me. Those people won't be able to find you. Come with me. Those people won't be able to find you." Chushio followed behind the Heavenly Sin branch leader. Feeling the other party's aura, Chushio could already confirm that the other party was definitely an expert who had gathered the 3 flowers, condensed the 5 chi, and finally reached the realm of being one with the world. Above the 5th level of chi controlling was the 3rd level of spirit condensation. Once one reached the 3rd level of spirit condensation, one would be at the Grandmaster level. As for the realm of being one with the world, one would be the strongest under the Grandmaster level. Such an existence was only a branch leader of the Blue Dragon Society, and the Blue Dragon Society had 36 Big Dipper divisions, so there were at least 36 branch leaders of this level. Of course, with the addition of the people from the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters, this number was definitely much more than 36. Chushio could also be considered to have a preliminary understanding of the Blue Dragon Society's strength. Although it could be said that Chushio joining the Blue Dragon Society now was half-forced, in reality, this might not be a bad way for the current Chushio. The Blue Dragon Society's strength was so strong that even a branch was enough to temporarily keep Chushio safe for a period of time. The Heavenly Sin branch leader had the strength of being one with the world, so his perception was incomparably strong. He easily led Chushio around the martial artists of the Jianghu who were chasing him, all the way to the Mount Tai County south of the Linzhong County. That was where the Heavenly Sin branch was located. At this time, the people of the big sects who were searching for Chushio also learned about Chushio from the martial artists who escaped from the taverns. They also knew that there were already 4 internal Aura Realm martial artists chasing Chushio, so they were very relaxed because this time, Chushio definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, they weren't in a hurry to rush over. Instead, they first informed Nie Donglu to come over before rushing over together. The group of people walked toward the dense forest along the tracks that had been washed away by the heavy rain. However, not long after they stepped into the forest, they saw scarlet blood flowing out. At first, they didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that they had either injured or killed Chushio. However, the more they walked, the more they felt that something was wrong. Why was there so much blood? The 4 of them weren't perverts. Could it be that they had dismembered Chushio's body into 1,000 pieces? Otherwise, why would there be so much blood? Nia Donglu frowned. He felt that something was wrong and immediately ran forward with his people. What appeared in front of them wasn't Chu Xiu's corpse, but 3 corpses and a pile of disgusting minced meat. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. What exactly was going on? 4 inner invulnerability experts teamed up to kill Chu Xiu. But they were killed by Chu Xiu instead? Nia Donglu didn't make a fuss like the others. Instead, he sent someone to check the corpses with a gloomy face. After that person looked at the corpses, he whispered into Nia Donglu's ear. Nia Donglu said in a low voice, "Among the 4, 1 was killed by Chu Xiu. The other 3 were definitely not killed by Chu Xiu. One of them was killed by a sword chi through the chest. Another was crushed by a powerful gang chi. And the last one was beheaded by a sharp gang chi. All 3 were killed with one move. Clearly, the attacker was more than 1 realm higher than them. The opponent could be a great expert in the 3 flowers realm, the 5 chis realm, or even the oneness of heaven and man realm." Everyone present looked at each other. Experts of this level were no longer nobodies in the Jianghu. They were people who could start their own sects no matter where they went. Not those small sects, but the big sections. According to their investigation, this Chu Xiu was born in the wilderness and had no connections. So who killed them and saved Chu Xiu? Nia Donglu frowned. He had a feeling that things had gotten out of his control. Looking at the people in front of him, Nia Donglu said in a low voice, "Everyone, Chu Xiu's whereabouts will continue to be listed as wanted. However, change it from a manhunt to a search. Don't do anything for now." Everyone present nodded. With such a thing happening, they didn't dare to do anything. Just as the large sects of the Linzhong Commandery were in a state of bewilderment, Chu Xiu followed the Heavenly Sin branch leader to a barren mountain in Mount Tai Commandery. Beside a seemingly unremarkable cave, the Heavenly Sin branch leader knocked on the wall a few times in a seemingly random manner. Immediately, a door appeared in the wall. "Go in. This is where the Heavenly Sin branch is located." Chu Xiu followed the Heavenly Sin branch leader. Beyond the door was a different world. There was actually a large underground palace. Going down to the bottom of the underground palace, there was a practice field in the center. There were close to 100 warriors in black warrior clothes. However, perhaps because they were in the branch, they didn't wear their iron hats. Instead, they carried them on their backs and hung their iron masks on their waists. Seeing the Heavenly Sin branch leader return, the 100 people immediately cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, branch leader." The Heavenly Sin branch leader nodded and asked a skinny old man in his 60s with a funny goatee, "Ghost Hand King, have you taken care of the Liu, Chao, and Yen families?" The Ghost Hand King nodded and said, "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." The Heavenly Sin branch leader nodded and pointed at Chu Xiu beside him. "I've taken care of the remaining members of the 3 families. This is Chu Xiu, who I just recruited into the branch. I'll leave him in your care. Let him rest for a while and tell him the rules. Then give him a mission to determine his rank." With that, the Heavenly Sin branch leader turned around and left. After the Heavenly Sin branch leader left, the rest of the people only looked at Chu Xiu for a bit before leaving. They either went to carry out their mission, practiced on the practice field, or returned to their houses to cultivate. If it were any other place, a person personally recruited by a branch leader would naturally attract a lot of attention. However, this was the Heavenly Sin branch. This was because 80% of the people present were personally recruited by the Heavenly Sin branch leader into the Blue Dragon Society. As a newcomer, Chu Xiu behaved very humbly. He cupped his hands towards the Ghost Hand King and said, "Greetings, Senior." The Ghost Hand King was older than him, and also had the strength of an inner aura realm martial artist. Most importantly, Chu Xiu could feel a trace of pressure from him. They were both in the inner aura realm, but among all the inner aura realm martial artists that Chu Xiu had seen, the Ghost Hand King's strength could be said to be the strongest. The Ghost Hand King looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of interest in his eyes. "Chu Xiu? That Chu Xiu who is wanted by the righteous manner? TSK, he's not simple. To be wanted by the righteous manner, and being chased by so many martial artists in the Linzhong region, and still be able to live until now, he's not an ordinary person." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Being chased by others is nothing to brag about. Moreover, this time, if it wasn't for the branch leader, I might have been forced into a dead end. The Ghost Hand King waved his hand and said, "There's no need to say more. If you're capable, then you're capable. Although our Heavenly Sin branch is currently lacking people, the branch leader won't bring in all the weaklings. Otherwise, if we lose face for the Blue Dragon Society, it won't look good for the branch leader when the higher-ups blame us. Since this is your first time in the branch, you don't have to accept any missions for now. Let me first tell you about our Blue Dragon Society, or rather, the Heavenly Sin branch's rules and things to pay attention to." Chapter 86. Assassins did not necessarily have to be extremely cold and ferocious. At the very least, the ghostly Hand King standing in front of Chu Xiu had a smile on his face most of the time. He looked a little comical and gave people a feeling that he was very harmless. However, Chu Xiu knew that when he was killing people, he would definitely have this smile on his face. Ghost Hand King gave Chu Xiu a detailed explanation of the rules of the Azure Dragon Society, as well as some of the rules of the Sin Division. In fact, Chu Xiu already knew a lot about it from the storyline of his previous life. It was just that Ghost Hand King was telling him more details. Although the Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization, they were both good and evil. To put it simply, the Blue Dragon Society would kill people from the righteous path or the evil path. In any case, as long as you could pay the price, the Blue Dragon Society would dare to kill anyone. Actually, the most interesting thing was the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Ordinary assassin organizations would first investigate the strength of the person they wanted to kill. Then they would ask for a price based on the strength of the person. However, the Blue Dragon Society did the opposite. The Blue Dragon Society didn't set a price for killing people. It was up to the employer. However much the employer paid, the Blue Dragon Society would send the assassin to kill the target. If it was successful, then it was successful. If it failed and the Blue Dragon Society people were killed, then the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't take revenge on the killer. Instead, they would take revenge on the employer. From the perspective of the Blue Dragon Society, it was because the employer didn't investigate the strength of the person they killed. Either that, or the employer didn't pay the price, causing the assassin sent by the Blue Dragon Society to be killed. Therefore, the target of revenge by the Blue Dragon Society wasn't the killer, but the employer. It was because of this rule that people who hired the Blue Dragon Society to kill people were very cautious. They would investigate the strength of the other party and prepare more resources than usual. Only then would they dare to hire the Blue Dragon Society to kill people. Otherwise, if they didn't kill the person, it was very likely that they would be killed. In Chu Xiu's opinion, this was quite clever. The person who had set this rule in the past was simply a genius. Normal assassin organizations would have to negotiate with their employers, and some would even complain that it was too expensive. However, the Blue Dragon Society was different. Those employers were afraid that if they didn't take enough money, the assassins that the Blue Dragon Society sent out wouldn't be strong enough, and accidents would happen during the assassination. Therefore, they would try to take as much money as possible. In this way, the price of the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society was directly raised to the #1 position in the underworld. As for the reward for killing someone, most of the time, the Blue Dragon Society headquarters took 30%, the assassins took 50%, and the leader took 20%. However, because the Blue Dragon Society was spread throughout the entire pugilistic world, the situation was different, and the authority in the hands of the leaders was also different. Thus, in some places the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters would get quite a bit, but the assassins would get less, while the leaders would get more. Of course, the Heavenly Sin branch still strictly followed the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Originally, the Heavenly Sin branch had very few people, so the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch naturally had to win over the assassins under him. After introducing the rules of the Blue Dragon Society, the Ghost Hand King told Chu Xiu about the origin of the Heavenly Sin branch. The entire Heavenly Sin branch only had around 100 people, which was a little too shabby. Other than the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch, who was an expert in the one with the Heavens realm, the strongest of the others were only in the physical invulnerability realm. In fact, the original Heavenly Sin branch was very strong. There were thousands of people, and there were also many experts in the 3-flower realm and the 5-chi realm. However, it was a pity that 3 years ago, the Heavenly Sin branch was forcibly annihilated. Almost all the assassins in the branch were killed. That was why the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society sent the leader of the Heavenly Sin branch here and asked him to rebuild the Heavenly Sin branch. The Ghost Hand King was an old member of the Heavenly Sin branch. When the Heavenly Sin branch was annihilated, he was outside on a mission and escaped the disaster. As for who killed the Heavenly Sin branch, the Ghost Hand King didn't know. He had a vague guess, but he didn't dare to say it. In fact, even if he didn't say it, Chu Xiu could more or less guess it. Even if the Blue Dragon Society was only a branch, it wasn't weak. To be able to annihilate a branch of the Blue Dragon Society, other than the Northern Yan Dynasty, it would be the Mortuary Manor, the Northern Snowfall City, and other top forces in the pugilistic world. After roughly explaining these things, the Ghost Hand King said, "Actually, the rules of the Heavenly Sin branch are even simpler. You only need to know one thing, and that is to absolutely obey the leader's orders. As long as you remember this, everything else will be easy." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded. He only knew that this Heavenly Sin branch leader wasn't someone who would settle down in the original plot. Now that he looked at it, the other party's desire for control was also very strong. The Ghost Hand King continued, "Within the branch, everyone can call each other by name. However, when we go out on missions, not many people are willing to reveal their real names. So, we all have a code name for each other, so it's convenient to communicate with each other when carrying out missions. Of course, not everyone has a code name. The assassins of the Blue Dragon Society have a total of 9 levels. The highest level of mission you have completed is the highest level of assassin you are. For a branch like ours, normally a level 7 mission is the highest we can go. We can't complete any higher. Level 1, 2 and 3 assassins don't have code names, only numbers. Only those who have completed level 4 missions are qualified to have a code name, and they can draw a picture on their mask." The Ghost Hand King took out the mask on his waist and waved it in front of Chu Xiu. There was a picture of a clown drawn on it. "My code name is the Ghost Hand King. As for my real name, it's no longer important. After being called Ghost Hand King for more than 10 years, even I have forgotten what my real name is." As he spoke, the Ghost Hand King pointed at a handsome but expressionless young man with a heavy sword on his back. He said, "This person is the Cruel Sword Yen Bugue. He is in the Qi-controlling physical invulnerability stage, and is one of the strongest assassins in the Heavenly Sin branch. This guy usually likes to stand in a corner and stare blankly. However, once he makes a move TSK, the scene of him killing people can make people vomit. Anyway, this guy has a psychological problem, so don't provoke him." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. To be able to join the Blue Dragon Society as an assassin, how many of them didn't have psychological problems? As he spoke, the Ghost Hand King pointed at a young martial artist meditating in the middle of the training field. There was a strange golden pattern on his mask and he said, "This is Tangya. His name is Tangya, and his code name is also Tangya. Anyway, he's a weirdo. In the entire branch, apart from the branch leader, no one knows where he came from. He is also in the Qi-controlling physical invulnerability stage. In the entire Green Dragon Society, there were only 2 physical invulnerability realm martial artists. Including the Ghost Hand King, there were 3 inner invulnerability realm martial artists. The other 2 were the Wolf King, who had a wolf's head painted on his mask, and the Fire Slave, who obviously didn't look like someone from the Central Plains. He seemed to be from the West regions, and his mask was painted with fire patterns. 2 physical invulnerability stage, and 3 inner invulnerability stage. This kind of strength was already very strong in Linzhong Commandery. It was even stronger than the Yu family of Bailing that had been chasing after him previously. However, it was a pity that in a branch of the Blue Dragon Society, this was a little shabby. After introducing the general situation to Chu Xiu, the Ghost Hand King said to Chu Xiu, "After joining my Blue Dragon Society, there are still some greeting gifts. The Blue Dragon Society headquarters refined Azure Dragon spiritual pills, that are 6 transformations. With your current strength, you can get 2 of them. Also, I will send the clothes and masks of my Blue Dragon Society to your house later. After you rest for a few days, come back to accept the mission and confirm your assassin rank. Speaking up to this point, the Ghost Hand King looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should only be 1 step away from the inner invulnerability stage. To be able to step into the inner invulnerability stage at such a young age, you can even be stronger than most of the young talents on the Longhu list." Hearing the Ghost Hand King's words, Chu Xiu immediately understood what the other party meant. The Ghost Hand King's attitude towards Chu Xiu was indeed not bad. However, the person in front of him was a veteran assassin who had been in the Blue Dragon Society for more than 10 years. He had killed countless people in his lifetime. If he was really as amiable as he was now, he would have been killed long ago in the middle of a mission. Right now, his attitude towards Chu Xiu was so gentle and his explanation was so detailed. In fact, there was only one reason, and that was because of Chu Xiu's strength. Although the Heavenly Sim branch of the Blue Dragon Society was small, it was clearly divided into 2 groups. Obviously, those martial artists who hadn't stepped into the inner invulnerability stage and didn't have a code name were one group. As for the Ghost Hand King and the other assassins who had code names, they were another group. Dragons didn't make friends with snakes. Before their strength reached the level of the Ghost Hand King and the others, they had no interest in accepting these people. However, Chu Xiu was different. In the outside world, Chu Xiu already had a great reputation. Moreover, his strength had already reached the peak of the innate realm, and was about to break through. When Chu Xiu reached the inner invulnerability stage, he would be in existence at the same level as them. Befriending Chu Xiu now was the same as befriending one's future companions. After understanding the Ghost Hand King's thoughts, Chu Xiu didn't feel anything against it. On the contrary, he felt that this kind of thing was very normal. What kind of strength? What kind of treatment? Wanting others to look at you differently without strength, this kind of protagonist treatment was something that Chu Xiu didn't think he would have. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.